From the Penn Libraries.
Sure. So, my name is Shimrit Keddem. I manage the Mixed Methods Research Lab, like I said earlier. So most of my time is spent doing a lot of project management of a service center where we have over 40 projects at the moment with over about 12 to 15 staff members who are doing coding, analysis. We also do data collection and recruitment, so we kind of do the full package of the qualitative study. And in my spare time, I sometimes train people on how to use NVivo. So this is NVivo. Like I said, it looks very Microsoft-y, so if people are used to Microsoft Outlook, NVivo is very similar to that. So in Outlook, people mostly go to mail and calendar, right? In NVivo, you mostly are looking at sources and nodes, which are basically terms for your data and your codes. So this database is actually a sample database that comes with the installation of the software. And you'll see here under sources, they have a number of different types of data. So in NVivo, you can actually analyze documents, PDFs, datasets. So those would be surveys where you might be doing a survey and people will answer open-ended responses throughout. You can bring those into NVivo and analyze the open-ended responses in the context of some of the other things you might be asking, like demographics or other more quantitative questions. NVivo, you can also analyze any sort of web content. You can bring in things from Twitter or Facebook, LinkedIn conversations, and any website, really. It has a software that gets installed with NVivo called NCapture, if people are familiar, and that allows you to pull anything off the web and bring it in. And now, sort of brand new in the last like 6 months to a year, it can interface with SurveyMonkey as well, and I haven't actually done that, so I have experience doing that, but it's supposed, I think they're looking to have it interface with more and more sort of web-based and other applications. So you'll see here, I always think of qualitative data analysis software as essentially just allowing you to organize things. The whole idea is that you can organize things into categories, into buckets, into files, whatever you want to call them, and then it helps you understand your data better. So it's just an organizational tool in my mind. So you'll see it allows you to make different folders for different items. Here you see as I scroll through, here's a folder called Interviews. You'll see the different icons next to each of the names is a different type of data source. So the little yellow pad is an interview, so a text file. The little film strip is a video. And here's the video. And then the little call out is an audio file. So you can analyze any of those things. I can also show you in this coded database how you might look at your codes. So if I turn on what are called coding stripes, you can see in this transcript these different sections, these stripes on the side correspond to sections of text. So where there's a stripe, that section of text is coded. And let me find a good example, so you'll see here there's a code for local identity, and so you know that if I click on it, here this line that's highlighted is coded as local identity. And then they also have social media data in here, so let me show you what that looks like. So here's something that comes from Twitter. And when you import things from Twitter, when you download them using NCapture, they can come into the software as a PDF or as a data set. And all that means is that it's in tabular format, and it will actually pull from the web not just the tweet, but also different attributes about the person who posted it and whether it was a tweet or retweet, or how many, sometimes it has biographical information about the person who posted it, or how many followers they have. So different types of information that's available. And then on the other end of things, so those were sources of data. I'll close those. On the other end of things, you'll have your codes. So here again, you can organize your codes into folders as well. This is the main coding structure of this particular database, and so codes can be hierarchical. They would have descriptions, so you'll see for the code community here, there's a little description, so there's different ways to organize and keep a paper trail, so that's the other big piece of a qualitative analysis and qualitative data analysis software is keeping a paper trail. So any place where you can make notes is another way to organize yourself and know what you did. So that's there in the description. You can also color code items. So you see on the side here, there's different colors. So another way to organize yourself. Some people are really into color coding, so that's an option. And the other thing I wanted to show you are some query functions. So once you, as people know from doing qualitative data analysis, you basically spend most of your time, diligently coding your data. So once you've coded all of your data, you could do some queries in NVivo. There are some queries that you can do before you even do any coding. So there's one called a word frequency query. So what that does is it allows you to look at either your entire data set or some subset of your data set and look at the words that are being used and by frequency. Look at how often they're being used and the patterns in that. So it allows you to look for patterns in your data maybe before you're going to actually do some coding. You just have some interviews and you want to look to see what's coming up in them. You can look at words. So to do that, I'm going to run a word frequency here for the top 1,000 most frequent words. So you see what I get is a list of words, the length of the word, how often it came up, and then this weighted percentage is by character count, how much of the data that I searched was that word. And this is all interactive, so it allows you to go back to the data. So if I double click on any of these items, like beach, for example, wait for it. So here's the word beach in context, so it's showing me all the places in that data that I searched where the word beach came up. And you'll see these hyperlinks throughout, so if I scroll through this, I can actually go right back to the actual source document where that word might show up. So here I have Dorothy's interview, and you'll see the word beach is highlighted for me. Along with this list that you get, you also get some visualizations in NVivo with some of the queries that you run. So this is called a tag cloud, and people are probably familiar with seeing these on websites and things. And so it's showing you that the more frequent words are larger, the less frequent words are smaller. And again, this is all interactive. I'm not sure what all these numbers are. So if I double click on the word development here, so I can see in context where that's coming up in the data, I can go ahead and see that again, and go back to the source document if I need to. The other visualization that comes with this query is a tree map. This is, again, showing you in a different way, the more frequent to the less frequent words. So the larger rectangles are the more frequent, the smaller, less frequent. And I like this in a way because you get to see the most and the least at a glance. And again, it's all interactive, so you can click on any of those items and go back to the data. And then cluster analysis. is going to show us which words tend to co-occur, so tend to be closer together and co-occur in the same document. So again, it might give you a sense of how your data is shaking out and what to look for. And again, all interactive. Another way to run this query is using the thesaurus tool in NVivo. So NVivo has a built-in thesaurus and actually comes in a few different languages, so you can kind of set your language if you want. And so if I rerun that query that I just ran, and I'm going to limit the number of words because I'm worried it might take a really long time. And I'm going to, instead of using an exact search, I'm going to use synonyms. So you'll see what that does when I run it like that. It might take a minute. Like, it's funny because it still says 1,000 items down here, even though I said 60, 50. Okay, there we go. So here again, you're getting the list, but what it's doing is it's lumping together words that it considers to be synonyms. So then what you get is more like ideas or themes or broader items as opposed to like exact word matches. And again, it's just another way to look at your data. And again, it's cool because you can do it without ever, doing any work. You just have to be careful, obviously, like you would with any other analysis software, of how you interpret these results. And if you look to see what it considers to be similar words, you might think it's a little iffy. So like, for development, one of the words that it includes as a synonym is original. So, you just use this with caution, obviously.
Can you remove words from that?
Yes.
Similar words?
Yeah. So every project comes with a stop words list, and it's project specific, so I'll just show you. And that list is automatically pre-populated, so there are default words that go into that list for every project. It's located here under project properties. And this is the default list. This is something I haven't changed. Though potentially because this database was created by some other team, they might have changed it. But this is customizable. So if words show up that you don't want to show up in your next search, you can remove them by right-clicking and saying Add to Stop Words List. All right. So the other kind of powerful thing about NVivo that we use a lot, so we do a lot of comparisons across groups because we do mostly interviews and focus groups, and we do all sorts of comparisons either by demographic or maybe clinical characteristics, like maybe you're doing a set of interviews with depressed patients and you want to look at people's responses based on how depressed they are. So you look at low, medium, high depression scores, and you'll sort your data by those things. So NVivo allows you to bring in all sorts of other kinds of quantitative information about your data and to be able to kind of cut it however you want. So there's a query that we use a lot in the lab where I work. That's nice. It's called a matrix query. So I'll show you one that's already here in this database. So it's populating a table here. And these items on the side here, these 7 items, are things that somebody actually went through the data and coded for. So these are reasons that people cited for fishing decline in this data. And then it's comparing, this matrix query is comparing the people by whether they were commercial or recreational fishermen, and what they thought were the reasons for fishing decline. So in this column, these are commercial fishermen, this first column, and these are recreational fishermen. And these are the different reasons. The numbers that you see in the cells are reference counts, so chunks of text of places where that was coded for. So for example, here where it says due to regulations as a reason for fishing decline, I'm going to double click there, and then again it takes me to my data. And you'll see that these are the two references. So that's what the count is that you see. So one statement and two statements. And this, and then you can change these numbers too. You can, if you want to count people, for example, because sometimes you'll get somebody who you'll have one person talk a lot about one topic, but that's only representative of one person. And if you want to look at representation for your group and say like 50% of people talked about X, you can look at this by people as well, by number of people. Visualization that comes with this is a 3D chart here. Again, fancy stuff, but it's really important to know what it's saying. So that's why it's so powerful to be able to go into your data, read it, understand it, make conclusions about it, without necessarily relying 100% on like the big tall bar here. But you can click on the big tall bar and it should take you to your data. There you go. So that's it.
Thank you. We could take maybe 5 minutes for questions and then take on our second tool.
Yeah.
I have a question. So I keep saying I'm waiting for NVivo to develop this, but is there the visual network view in NVivo where you can pull in your data and sort it?
So I haven't played with it a whole lot, but there is this model thing where you can create a model and add things to it. I don't know if it does. I know what you do because you've shown it to me before, and you pull in like all of the items in your database and you kind of like move them around and stuff. I don't know if you can do that in NVivo. I know you can pull in a lot of items and look at how they're related.
Right, like that. Okay.
But and I don't know how much of that in Atlas, I would be curious, is kind of automated for you, like, or how much of it you need to make connections in order for it to actually be there. So I'd be curious to know that.
I'll show you in a minute.
Yeah.
Any other questions after our first demo? Thank you, Shimrit.
You're welcome.
I'm the Director of Evaluation at the Netter Center for Community Partnerships. I'm a social anthropologist, so I do ethnography. But I learned a long time ago, being a public interest in practicing anthropologist, that numbers are very, very important and just tell you a lot of different information. So I feel every data set has limitations and really gives you one glimpse at something that you're studying. So I studied statistics, so I do GIS mapping and kind of everything, because I really believe that a holistic approach to problem solving and research is ideally the best way to go. So Atlas and NVivo are very, very similar. They have pretty much the same features. There's a few differences in the interface. I'm the only full-time staff member at the Netter Center dedicated to evaluations, so my entire staff is made up of students at Penn. So I have anywhere between 20 and 30 students that work for me all across the university. Some also do volunteer placements or just want to do dissertation research, master's degree, thesis research. So we rely heavily on team-based analysis. And it's extremely important that I be able to audit the analysis that my students do. And I found that Atlas is an amazing tool to be able to do that with. So my presentation is not really going through all of the various features. It's more walking you through how I teach my students to go about doing qualitative analysis in Atlas. So there are many features that I won't be able to answer your questions about. It seems to be cutting off the top part of the slide. I don't know if the screen.
Here, I can. I feel like sometimes what happens in unfortunately is you have to reboot the machine.
I've been plugging it in.
Yeah, I think that setting.
Oh, there we go. Okay, thank you. So, as Shimrit said, most of the data that we rely upon are focus groups, interviews, field notes, documents, meeting minutes, notes, and we import everything into Atlas as text. So the main reasons for Atlas, or the uses for it, is that it helps to reduce bias in interpretation. So you do have to be extremely careful and thoughtful about context, your own bias. I always say that you are the data collection instrument in qualitative research, so it's extremely important that you're very aware of the meanings that you attach, the analysis that you bring, the interpretation that you bring to your data before you've actually analyzed it. So it's extremely important that you really thoughtfully take note of when you're pre-analyzing your data. And so I found going through Atlas with our data helps us to reveal things that we never knew or expected. It also helps to demonstrate that something that stood out to us is really just in our minds, that nobody else really felt that way or shared that information. So uncovering patterns and common themes. It's very, very easy to do team-based analysis, except for the new features with the library. That's causing us a lot of problems. It preserves the analytic process, so if you have been away from your data for quite a while, it can take sometimes hours to re-emerge yourself into the data. We find that using Atlas helps to preserve that, so you can more quickly jump back into your data. So if you haven't been working with it for a while, or if you want to use the same data set but analyze it slightly differently, it preserves all of that as well. So it's much better than the olden days of the highlighter and the sticky notes and how we used to do it. It also allows for easy audits of the data analysis and interpretation process. So I can go in and I can check the data, the codes, the quotes that my students had pulled together or other researchers, and their interpretations. So we can come together as a team and really question each other's interpretations to see if we've collectively come up with the same analysis. And then it's it makes report writing very, very easy the way I've done it. So this is over 10 years of trial and error. I have perfected the way I like to use it. But again, you have to really know what research you're doing and what your needs are to really understand which tool to use. So the overall project in Atlas, they call it an HU. It's an hermeneutic unit. For a long time, I wondered who sat around and thought hermeneutic unit would be a good name, but it actually is quite fitting. So hermeneutics really is the study of methodological principles of interpretation, or a branch of knowledge that deals with interpretation. So that's really what it is that qualitative analysis is about. So it does make sense, actually. This is the overall platform. I do have access to the actual software, so if at the end you want me to demonstrate something a little more interactively, I can do that. But this is where we begin. So again, it's a much different interface than NVivo. And if you've used one and try to switch to the other, one's vertical, one's horizontal, and it can cause some confusion. So as Anu said, if you pick one, be prepared to stick with it for a while because they are quite complex. The first thing is you load in your primary documents. So we bring everything in here. Each primary document is given a number so that you know what the document is about. It helps definitely to have a standard naming nomenclature for all of your files so that you can sort things and really easily know what is included in that file, whether it's a website or a focus group at a particular school or an interview or an observation, whatever it is. There are many things that Atlas can import now that I haven't dabbled with, so I'm not sure, honestly, if you can do audio files and some other really amazing things that NVivo allows you to do now. I know you can bring in videos. I haven't tried that yet. And there are many things that I know it can do in the later versions that I haven't attempted. So the primary documents, then we have codes, so that's you can create codes. You can also, similar to NVivo, create code families, so you can create hierarchies of codes. When you create codes, it helps to name them in a particular order that you want them to be seen as. But you can also filter. You can use a filter feature with primary documents. So if you want one person to analyze a particular set of documents and somebody else to analyze the other, you can create families. So you can filter out just the codes or the quotes or the documents that you want to be looking at. So the process that I use is really thinking about qualitative analysis as a series of steps towards data reduction. So when we initially have all of our text, it's a huge amount of data and narrative. It can be somewhat overwhelming to sort through and figure out how to go about organizing it, but if you really think about it as steps to data reduction, you're trying to reduce it into smaller data sets that have common themes, common patterns that emerge. So your code selection initially should really match what you want to be doing. And I found that aligning your codes to the specific goals of your research initially are very, very helpful. So sometimes you might want to just very organically sort through your data to get a feel of what's taking place. Sometimes you might have very specific research questions or evaluation questions that you want answered, and it helps then to just really think about what your questions are and aligning your codes to that. Because if you're reading through a lot of qualitative data, it's easy to find everything really, really interesting and get your focus off. That's what I have. I have that problem. So initial coding, I always recommend that it's ideal if you use fewer codes. Sometimes people will try to refine their codes before they actually go through their data, which causes, in many cases, pre-analysis to take place, that you've already created meaning about what you're going to find in your data. So if you can create very large, broad codes as the initial sweep of data reduction, and then you reduce those data sets even further to really look at the more refined patterns that emerge with that. So you might choose successes and challenges, but if you have 1,000 documents, that's too few, right? So you need to refine it a little bit more. And the use of comments and memos, I definitely would encourage to use comments on the memos and quotes over multi-coding. Sometimes people will code, they'll feel like a particular body of text speaks to a few different themes, but I have experienced many times, especially in group analysis projects, that people will use the same quote to illustrate multiple ideas, and when you get to the final report, it becomes very confusing and muddy and sort of leads to misinterpretation. It becomes very easy. So we'll kind of go through that a little bit. And definitely give yourself a lot of time. Going through qualitative data takes a long time, so it's also part of why people like numbers, because it's fast. Qualitative data does take time, but I found Atlas really does make the process much more efficient. And always keep your mind open to things that are unanticipated, so the things you don't know that you don't know. So when you create quotes, you would select text. So again, it's the same as in NVivo. You have these bars here to show what text is selected. But instead of the vertical alignment, this is horizontal. So again, that switch can kind of mess with your head a little bit. And then the best way I have found, so in NVivo, you would have your codes and whatnot at the top and your text underneath. But here you can open your code memo or code manager to the side, and then you would just drag your quotes over.
You can do that in NVivo too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is just a sample of a quote comment. So it's attached to this, and you can add text here, so you can make a note to yourself that gives you additional context to that particular quote. So it's very, very easy when you take a quote or take language out of the broader context of a dialogue or a discussion to misinterpret the meaning, right? So you can add names, you can clarify what somebody is referring to earlier in the document, you can make the notes there that this example is also related to another code. So that becomes very, very helpful just to give you additional context to remind you later when you're reading that quote what the actual context was of when it was said. When you create all of your quotes, they come in a list, and they tell you the primary document and then which quote it is in that document. So the first one is primary document number 1, quote number 1. Down here, you can see primary document 1, quote 28. And you can rename all of these if you want to. Otherwise, it just by default gives you the first few words of the quote. And then it tells you exactly where it's located. So once you've coded all of your data, the analytic process I follow is pretty much only this. So there are many features with it. There are queries you can do. I don't use those at all. I just only use the network view. So you can create different network views based on what you want to look at. You can import, and this is the visual process. It gives you a blank slate. I'm a very visual person, so this is why I like Atlas. You can bring in a code, and then you would import all of the quotes that are tied to that code. And it comes out like this. And you can click on it. It will show you the text of that. It tells you where it came from, so you can have an understanding of if it's all of your data are from a single person or from a single day, or if it's something that took place over a variety of days and a lot of people spoke to a similar issue. You can then click on that further and it will take you back to the original document as well, so you can see it again in context. You can import almost anything. So when you're importing, it can allow you to import codes, you can import memos, you can import specific quotes, so it really gives you the ability to bring in particular pieces of data to look at it more carefully. So this is the painstaking part that takes us a very, very long time, and it can make you a little bit crazy. So if you have 1,000 quotes that come in with a particular code, then I would say you need to go in and reduce your data even further, because you might go crazy. But we single-handedly read through each quote, and we start to cluster them based on similar themes, common patterns that emerge. And then in this view, you can create a memo that you can link to those quotes. And in the memo, you can write a summary about why you put all of these examples together. So we found this extremely helpful. So this would just be an example of self-efficacy and empowerment was the original code. All of these quotes we felt fell under that. And as we sorted them, we were able to reduce the data even further. So now we have smaller data sets, and you can link them together. Later you can remove that, and then you're left with these smaller themes. In the memos, you can be as analytic as you want. We end up using what's in the memos usually in our actual reports. You can end up copying and pasting it directly from Atlas. So then you have sort of your summary that 12 different parents or students spoke to the need for reducing barriers and access to staff, for example. And then you would actually have all of the quotes that illustrate that finding. It's also very helpful in your memos if you make a note of what the quote is. So you would have 1:12 referring to what the quote is, so that if another person comes in, they can open the memo, they can read the quotes, and then we can audit the data and see if we all have the same interpretation. It's also very helpful because we've had to redo analysis. Sometimes we'll go in and we find that somebody was missing a really important critical concept or piece of information, and we felt that for the research project, the analytic process was a bit biased, so we would go in and reanalyze it, but it's very easy to do it in Atlas because you just literally move it, and you can create new codes, you can recode, you can do everything in Atlas in this view. So that's why I use Atlas. This speaks to me very well. Another process, if you end up with a lot of memos tied to different quotes, you can also create, we do this process of meta-analysis, is what I've called it, where you can import all of your memos and you do the same process. And you can start to cluster the memos, which are the overall findings, which helps us with report writing, because sometimes it's very difficult to then know how do you organize the writing process of your analysis. Sometimes you might have a research project that's very, very structured, so it's easy to know how to organize it based on a particular question you've been trying to answer. Otherwise, you might find that there are common themes. And if you click on these again, you can access all of the quotes. So when you export then all of the text, so this is an export of the memos along with all of the associated quotes, and it gives you this text document, and then you can go in and remove all the file paths, but again, you can take a look at where your data came from. You can find the best quotes that illustrate a point you're trying to make, just delete the rest, and it makes the final report writing very, very quick. So here's an example then of something we had done where we have, the overall theme, basically the finding that we had in the memo, and some quotes to illustrate that finding.
Thank you, Gretchen. So why don't we take a few minutes for questions on Atlas, and then we'll go on to our third goal.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's very important not to get distracted, right? Because there's so much data. How do you combat that? Or, what are some of your techniques that kind of?
So mostly it's just staying very clear about the questions you're trying to answer.
Okay.
So if we're doing an evaluation report and we don't have a lot of data, we actually will start our analysis literally with successes and challenges. And we just look at it just in those two ways. And then as we go through it, we figure in greater detail what successes exist, what challenges exist, and then as we take it down, we can write a formative evaluation report quite quickly. If we have a larger research project, we might have very, very particular questions where a project has hypotheses. So we did an evaluation report of a playground build project, and they had multiple goals related to health and fitness, attitudes of kids, the facilities. So we created our process of analysis based strictly on those categories.
Sure.
To add to that too, I think like the team-based approach helps because you help each other not get distracted. So like the whole audit piece that you're talking about, and in NVivo there's ways to run into data reliability. I'm sure there's like that in Access, where we have meetings around like where we disagree, and then we kind of check each other. Like you're getting distracted in this direction, I'm getting distracted in that direction. So
I can see there's lots of similarities. It's really helpful.
They're very similar.
So what I thought I could do is, I'm Aksel Gungor, by the way, one of the founders and current CEO at Acclaim. We're a startup based in Center City. I think that'll be good. Let's see.
Do you have sound? Oh, you're muted at the bottom.
That's okay. There's no sound, that's fine. So I think where NVivo and Atlas fit are probably a little bit further down the timeline of looking at data, where Acclaim can be more of sort of a data gathering tool, specifically around video. So what I thought I could do is maybe just do a quick walkthrough of Acclaim, maybe just a couple minutes, and then kind of the use cases that we're hearing within different courses and different disciplines and from different professors, and then I'll kind of open it up from there. So put simply, Acclaim facilitates what we like to say discussion and student engagement and feedback around video content. And so what that means is you can have different videos added to the platform privately, and then the videos can be annotated. So to do that, you can simply play the video, and as soon as you want to make a comment, you can simply either pause the video by pausing the video itself, or clicking the text box right below the video, and that pauses the video at that point in time. It just so happens that I paused it at 30 seconds here, and now I can add my comment. So perhaps I want to critique this lovely lady in the video, or what she's saying, or her body language, depending on what course and the discipline is, I can add a comment. So I'll just say, this is my comment. Very good data with that comment, by the way. This is my comment. And it gets timestamped at 30 seconds. So that's kind of neat, right? Because all the comments are organized in that fashion. But what we actually do is link those comments to the moments in the video that they're referencing. So if I want to see what this comment's about, I can simply click this timestamp and you'll see the video skip to that frame. And so I can kind of jump around from comment to comment. And obviously this is not interesting because all these comments are my comments. But when you have a collection of 10, 15 students commenting on a video, it can get really interesting in terms of which parts of the video are really resonating with the students. Are they replying to each other and providing links to each other? We're seeing a lot of that, where students provide articles to, links to external resources to one another. This is one of those examples there. So on this screen itself, and these comments can be exported, right? So if I export this, I actually went ahead and did that a little bit earlier. You kind of get this Excel sheet of 4 columns. So what part of the video was the comment about? What kind of comment was it? Was it a reply to a comment or an original comment? What was the comment itself? And then who said it? So as I mentioned, this is really the data gathering aspect of Acclaim. Where we'd really like to get into is more where Atlas and NVivo are, which is having a visualization of this and the data within Acclaim itself, so you can really quickly see, okay, these students are participating the most, these are the videos that are really resonating with students, why is it that these videos are resonating with them? And then specifically with each video, what parts of each video are actually speaking to them, and why are they commenting and tagging those videos more than others? So that's a little bit about Acclaim. Oh, one more thing I wanted to highlight on this screen is obviously in addition to these annotations and the commenting, is the visual aspect, right? The actual video. And so there's a ton of qualitative data in there. A lot of feedback that we're receiving is tone, specifically with public speaking courses that we work with a lot, where tone is such a big part of a presentation or speech. We're gathering a lot of feedback about, can you add sort of sound waves in addition to these videos, where now we can not only look at the visual, the commenting, but also see the tone and sort of these intangible aspects of the content itself. And so that's kind of the annotation view, so to speak. All of the content is organized in folders, so you can create different folders and add the content within the folders. To get back to that original question, right now it is only videos. We are looking to add audio files as well, where you can annotate audio files, right? Or even slides or just other types of files. And that can be done through this. One last thing that I'll mention before kind of going to Q&A is we're really excited about the curation of content and then that being annotated. So you can upload videos to Acclaim, but you can also embed videos from the web. So I have this YouTube video as an example here. If I click on embed video, I can actually just go to YouTube, quickly grab a URL, paste it in. This will make sure that this is the right video. And now the video's in this folder that I created, and it can be shared with whomever I'm working with and annotated just like any other video that I would upload, right? Maybe an in-class recording, a presentation, a previous recording, whatever it may be. And so that's where we're really excited about that, because we see a lot of expansion there in terms of curating content from the web. Again, not only video, but podcasts, slides, any type of content, articles that can be brought into the classroom, annotated, and then can be analyzed in terms of the data that comes out of it. So with that, I can talk about maybe some of the challenges. I think something that you alluded to is, when you get a ton of these comments, obviously this is only 3, but one big question for us is, how granular do we want to get with the visualization of the data within Acclaim? We're hearing a lot of feedback about, it would be great if I could see how much of each video my students watched, which videos are being watched the most, kind of higher level stuff. The main challenge for us is, as excited as we are about this data, is like, how deep do we want to dive into it? Word cloud or tag cloud is certainly something that keeps coming up. And that's kind of a funny story with the public speaking course. We did a word cloud of I think it was 300 comments, and the 2 main words were good speech. So I don't know if they came together within the comments or independently, but nonetheless, that kind of tells you a little bit about what's going on, right, with the commenting. But all around those words, we saw technical terms that were being used in that communication class. So those are the things that we're really enthused about, and the challenge is how do we make this simple, right? Again, we're obsessed with simplicity, so how do we keep it simple and to the point?
So one thing that comes to mind is, so I feel like one of the hard things about using NVivo for video is that the entire video file has to be imported into NVivo, right?
No, it doesn't have to.
But this is like YouTube, right? So this stays on YouTube. You're not actually
That's correct.
bringing
If you're embedding from YouTube, yes, that's why it was so fast, because we're actually we've integrated into YouTube and we just pull that video and we present it in this private sort of view within Acclaim, and then the annotation is enabled.
That I feel would be pretty powerful, is maybe to use Acclaim with NVivo or with Atlas.ti and use the annotations and then just export the annotations and bring them in for analysis.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I think Acclaim comes sort of earlier in the timeline, and then really with a more comprehensive tool like Atlas or NVivo, you can really dig into the data and the comments themselves.
And when you record with webcam?
Yeah, we can do that right now. So we've kind of turned Acclaim as a recording device, so to speak. So if I click on this, my webcam will boot up, and this won't be a pretty video because it's just me sitting here. But I'll go ahead and, oops, I think I just recorded and stopped it by accident. So I'll record with webcam. This is just a privacy thing. I can record myself right here, and you can see that it's recording with this timer up here. So we'll just let it run for a little bit so there's some footage. But as soon as I want to end my recording, I can just pause it, save it, and the video will go right into this folder, right? And then much like any other video that I either embed or upload, it can be annotated. And so we're seeing a lot of creative assignments actually in the classroom being set up with this, where professors will want to create community around the classroom, perhaps the first week of class. And the first assignment will be record a selfie, talk about yourself, introduce yourself to the rest of the class, talk about why you're taking this class, what you're studying, why you're studying it. And then you have this collection of beautiful selfie videos of your students who can then comment on each other and ask each other questions. Everyone's name shows up, right? So even if they say something maybe a little inappropriate, there's sort of a self-policing mechanism built in there. And so those are some of the assignments that we're hearing that drive engagement up and sort of community in the classroom.
Is there a Mac version for Atlas.ti yet?
There wasn't one, but it's quite possible they just released one and I'm just unaware of it.
I don't think so. I was shopping for new computers and I really wanted a Mac, and I don't think there's an Atlas.
I guess both of them are primarily PC based.
And I'm not sure if I should say this on video, but I always tell my students, I bought the Atlas licenses before Penn had a campus license for NVivo, and the anthropology department has some older, much older versions of Atlas on their library computers that we potentially might have updated. And I keep saying that if NVivo creates that visual manipulative arena, that probably, I mean, if you're at Penn, it's definitely far more cost effective to use NVivo, but if you're definitely a visual learner, and like that.
So Penn does not have a site license for NVivo, but the library has a site license.
So the library only, okay.
Yeah, so there's no cheap, I mean, you can get a student version, but that's time limited, so there's no cheap way to get NVivo.
Or Atlas, Atlas is expensive.
And I do think that the Mac version, like I think that they're gonna grow that, but like I think they're just gonna keep updating it and add those things, but they just wanted to, I could tell they just wanted to get it out.
There's actually a Mac version of Atlas.ti coming out this month.
Oh, really? And it's just, it'll probably be similar where it won't have all of the features, initially. That's great.
I have a question about audio files. If you do an audio interview and you pull in the file into either one of those programs, and there's a new feature, can you do the transcription right there, or do you? Okay.
So with NVivo you could. It doesn't have the full set of kind of like transcription tools, but it does have, I think it'll slow down the audio for you,
Okay.
but like it won't minimize background noise, for example. So it's not like a transcription program, but
I just saw when they had that audio file, you could see the wave file,
Yeah.
and then you could see everything segmented. And
yeah, and it does do the slowing down thing. So.
I'll check that.
Yeah, I haven't ever tried
probably
to.
does.
We transcribe all of our data and then import it into Atlas.
Yeah, and as do we.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said I would talk a little bit about the other tools, right, the ones we're not featuring today. So I'll send everyone a link to this document so you can browse the materials that are on there. There was a very nice presentation that had questions that you might want to ask yourself in terms of what matters to you as a qualitative researcher. I mean, to some extent, Gretchen talked about how the reason Atlas.ti speaks to her is because of the ability to move stuff around. Depending on what type of workflow is a good fit for you, you might want to try something simple like Acclaim or something full-featured like NVivo. It just depends on how you want to manage your own research. So the presentation slides there have a nice set of questions, things you can ask yourself. What kind of data are you working with? What is your time schedule like? The Wikipedia software list is pretty extensive. I'll open it up. Atlas.ti and NVivo are both on there. But you can see it's quite a lot of options that you have for qualitative software. These two studies I thought were helpful. One is from Boston University, and it just explains their decision for making a campus-wide, and it kind of goes through for each one, all the pros and cons, Windows, Mac, and again you have the reduced functionality for the Mac, documentation, how it works with text, how it works with import. So this is a pretty long document. It's very specific to Boston University, but there was enough there where I felt like they had done some background work. And then the second one is similar, but it's from the UK, and it's from the University of Surrey. and it kind of explains the different ways, the different things you might care about as you're choosing a particular piece of software. And when you click on something, it'll take you to a pretty extensive analysis of that particular software program in that particular set of criteria. So quite detailed. I think, you know, especially if you're about to make a decision, I suppose it's good to spend some time poking around and trying things hands-on. So I guess, you know, we have about 15 minutes left. I'm not sure what would be helpful for you. I know we wanted to talk a little bit about what you might want to do next steps in terms of getting comfortable with these three. Did you want to talk, Aksel, about how they would explore Acclaim? I know there was a free sign-up option.
Yeah, so we love, we're just a year old, right? So we love kind of gathering feedback and gathering more and more information about different use cases. So to sign up, everything's web-based, so there's no installing, it works across all devices. And it's really us providing you with an access code that allows you to sign up. And then we do the same thing for your students or colleagues. And then you're off and ready to go. So it really comes down to if you want to work with us, and we might bother you with a ton of questions for feedback, but that's the deal.
Are there any privacy-related issues if students sign up?
Yeah, so everything is private. There's sort of two levels of privacy. So first, you need a code to sign up. Even if that code was shared, you know, with others, even within Acclaim, folders have to be shared. So if you create a folder and add content, you would have to share access to that folder with others. It's much like Google Drive or Dropbox if you've used those. So those are kind of the two levels of privacy. Even us at Acclaim, we don't have access to the folders. So when there's support issues that come in, we actually first ask to be given access, and then we're able to access it that way. So everything's user-centric, and the content is still owned by you.